भीर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So let us commence today's special service. Like every Sunday service, we begin with praying together our congregational Sunday prayer. So please join in chanting. We offer our salutations to the all-loving being who endows all with. We meditate on the Lord, who is the origin of the universe. Lord, thou abidest in all, thou art all, thou assumest all forms, thou art the origin and goal of all, thou art the self of all, thou art existence, knowledge and bliss. Salutations unto thee, may the world be peaceful, may the wicked become gentle, may all creatures think of mutual welfare. May their minds be occupied with what is spiritual and abiding. May our hearts be immersed in selfless love for the Lord. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. The special feature of this Sunday services, it is on the occasion of the celebration of birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. And this symposium, there will be a symposium now regarding the teachings and life of Swami Vivekananda. But we shall begin with a wonderful song on Swami Vivekananda, a Bengali song composed by one of his illustrious brother disciples, Swami Abhedananda. Abhedananda was the head of the Vedanta Society of New York, which is presently located on the 3471st Street on the west side of New York. So he, in praise of Vivekananda and bringing out in that song some of the very essential features of Swami Vivekananda's unique personality. So we shall have this song here performed by say Abhijit Sarkar, then where is Sukalyan? Sukalyan, then Sapna and Rahul and Abhijit Adak. Who else did I forget? Cyrus. Cyrus, yeah, very good. So please all of you join in singing this song. Come forward, please.
স্বদেশ বিদেশ উছলে উঠেছে তোমার নবীন তন্ত্র, আকাশ বাতাস দুনিয়া তুলিছে তোমার মোহন মন্ত্র। মন্দির ধরা মন্দির মাঝে ধর্মের সৎগন্ধ, মোদের কিরণ উচ্ছলে উঠিল উদিলে যেদিন বন্দে সর্ব করিল সুরভি বৃষ্টি বরষে আশিস সঙ্গে প্রেমের পুণ্য প্রবাহে সাজিল গৌর নিত্যানন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ উদ্ধরে সাগরে গহনে কাননে চাপিলে কত দানি সে তুষারে মানে ঘিরে পান্ডলে কত নদী সে অঙ্গুর পুন শঙ্কর জ্ঞান সাক্ষের জগানন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ জ্ঞানের গরিমা গৌরব গান ভারত মর্ম বাণী পাশ্চাত্য সেথা বেদান্ত গাথা শ্রী বিস্ময় মানি স্নিগ্ধ ভাবের শক্তি মাধুর মুগ্ধ নূতন ছন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ শিকাগো সঙ্গে সঙ্গীত তব শীর্ষে উঠিল ভাসি শুনিল বিশ্ব শুনিল শুনিল প্রাসাদবাসী সৃজিল শ্রীমঠ কুঞ্জ কুটির তীর্থ মুখরানন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ স্বদেশ বিদেশ উছলে উঠেছে তোমার নবীন কণ্ঠ আকাশ বাতাস ধরিয়া তুলেছে তোমার ধরা মন্দির মাঝে ধর্মের স্রোত বন্ধ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ মোদের বিবেকানন্দ তুমি গো বিশ্ব বিবেকানন্দ
Thank you, friends, for this very nice presentation of a deeply meaningful song. And that brings us to the beginning of the symposium. We are again privileged to have two very good, very learned speakers who are also ardent followers of the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. So let us hear their thoughts. I mentioned on such birthday celebrations an important feature that Swami Vivekananda has wrote in his letter about birthday celebrations, how they should be. And he makes a very important remark there. This letter was written to Swami Ramakrishna Ananda, that what did you do? You arranged some worship, basically ringing the bell and waving these things, and fed everybody whatever food. Is it that enough? It's okay, but more important thing is the scattering of the knowledge that we get from such personalities. A very important point in the birthday celebrations. Otherwise, they get just lost in just din and turmoil, that loud noise, and similar things, But therefore, we ought to have on this day some thinking, the thinking aspect of learning from their teachings. And so today we will be helped into this process by Yona Jugon. She is professor at what university? I forget. Emerson University. Yeah, he is not the same transcendentalist Emerson, a different Emerson. So she is, has skills in arts. She actually has performed many theatrical things, theater. She writes plays, directs them. And also, sometimes I feel it's a somewhat weird combination, and teaches business, It is. So, but actually, not much of a contradiction if you go deep. To do business properly is also an art. So, I will request her to present her thoughts, to bring some illumination as you understand Vivekananda.
Good afternoon, everyone, and pranams, Swami ji. There are a few things that I find particularly compelling about Swami Vivekananda. One is his incredibly powerful intellect and presence. Of course, I've never met him, but just from reading his words and the words of other people about him, I get an incredible sense of strength, a strong intellect, and a strong presence. Then there's the presence of women in his life and the respect that he accorded to them and the trust that he put in them. Some of his most prominent disciples and key figures in establishing different aspects of the Vedanta Ramakrishna movement were women. Sister Nivedita, Sister Christine, Mother Savior, Sarah Bull, and so on. Another compelling thing for me is Swami Vivekananda's philosophy of freedom. I haven't counted it, but the words free and freedom are so often repeated in his writings. And related to that, I also find very compelling and helpful the clarity and systematic nature of his mapping of the vast terrain of spiritual practice, the clarity and systematic nature of his presentation of the different ways in which we can obliterate the ego. This, the obliteration of the ego, seems to me to be the essence of spiritual practice. And my talk today will be focused on this. So the talk is titled, How to Obliterate the Ego According to Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda says, in everything we do, the serpent ego is rising up. And elsewhere, echoing the words of Sri Ramakrishna, this rascal ego must be obliterated. And he teaches us how we can do so. Before we examine how to obliterate the ego, let us first take up two related questions. What is the ego, and why should we obliterate the ego? Concerning the what question, To put it very simply, the ego, ahamkara, is the beginning of all our troubles. It is the sense or idea or mental construct of being a separate existence, a separate entity. On this sense of separateness, a host of identities pile up. First, I'm the body and the mind, and then come all sorts of ever finer qualifications of what it means to be a body and a mind. I'm a woman, I'm this many years old, I'm this ethnicity, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm whatever my profession may be, I'm intelligent, I'm a born leader, I'm creative, and on and on and on. The ego thus stems from wrong identifications, from the misrecognition and forgetfulness of our own true nature. Then there's the tremendous work that we do to strengthen, to reinforce this pile of identities, to give them an appearance of stability, permanence, and coherence. Attachment and desire now come into play. Attachment, a fixation, a grasping, a holding on to obsessively. Desire, a reaching out to get, to grab. Sri Ramakrishna succinctly summarizes the essence of attachment with the words kama kanchana, lust and greed, desire or pursuit of sense pleasures and of wealth. In kama kanchana lies the source of all our desires. The images one makes of oneself, in which one has invested one's sense of self, need to be validated, strengthened, reinforced by and through external factors. To illustrate with a simple example, if I'm invested in the idea that I'm intelligent, I will want people to recognize and admire my intelligence. I will need diplomas and accolades to prove it. I'll compare and measure myself against others. I'll surround myself with people recognized as intelligent, and so on. If people fail to recognize my intelligence, or God forbid someone calls me stupid, I'll be very upset, angry, or worse. Swami Vivekananda says, quote, "From attachment comes longing, and longing breeds anger. From anger comes delusion, and from delusion, confused memory. From confused memory comes the ruin of discrimination, and from the ruin of discrimination, a man perishes." To recap, there's first the sense of separateness, of being a separate entity, on which all sorts of identities begin to accumulate, identities that need to be reinforced and strengthened so as to acquire an appearance of stability, permanence, and coherence. Here come attachment and desire. Swami Vivekananda describes this whole process in terms of contraction, a contraction of that which is infinite and free into that which is finite, limited, conditioned. He warns, beware. All expansion is life, all contraction is death. All love is expansion, all selfishness is contraction. And this also applies to the level of the nations, not just the individuals. Again, Vivekananda. All narrowness, all contraction, all selfishness is simply slow suicide. And when a nation commits the fatal mistake of contracting itself and of thus cutting off all expansion and life, it must die. Now, to the question of why. Why should we obliterate the ego? Vivekananda already responded in the statement that I've just quoted, because the ego brings death. A non-existent leads to non-existence. The ego is a host of false, untrue identifications. So if we care about the truth, we need to give up the untruth, as Swami Yogatmananda tells us again and again. But that may not be such a compelling argument or a compelling reason, especially in our so-called post-truth age. Perhaps more compelling is the fact that the ego and the attachment and desire associated with it is the source of suffering, of pain, of misery, of bondage. Swami Vivekananda says it again and again, and I'm just going to quote a few, but I could go on for probably hours quoting this statement or this idea. All misery and pain come from attachment. Again, Vivekananda, as soon as we identify ourselves with the work we do, and here we can substitute work with anything, family, body, intelligence, and so on. As soon as we identify ourselves with it, we feel miserable. But if we do not identify ourselves with it, we do not feel that misery. Another quote, if one thing is obvious to me, it is that desires bring all misery. It is the state of the beggar who is always begging for something. And unable to see anything without the wish to possess it is always longing for more. If the power to satisfy our desires is increased in arithmetical progression, the power of desire is increased in geometrical progression. End quote. The ego is bondage, it is dependence, it is conditioning. If I get praise, then I'm happy. If I don't, I suffer. If I get sex, I'm happy. If I don't, I suffer. And yet the more I get, the less it satisfies. The ego is misery. It hurts like hell, whether we acknowledge it or not. This is the mechanism of the ego. What is great, our own true nature, thinks of itself as little and insists on being little, even as it desperately desires to be great. What is immortal thinks of itself as mortal and insists on being mortal, even as it desperately desires to live forever. What is free takes itself to be subject to all kinds of restrictions. And as a body-mind complex, there's no escape from these limitations. So why should we obliterate the ego? Because if we want true freedom, if we want true happiness, if we want true love, if we do not want suffering, there's no other way. This rascal ego must be obliterated. But how? There are many ways and practices, and Swami Vivekananda helpfully systematizes and generalizes them under the names of Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Raja Yoga. Based on our different temperaments, we may be more drawn to one or another. Based on our capabilities, we may be better suited to practice one or another. In our Ramakrishna tradition, we're encouraged to blend all of them, even as the proportions in which we do so will differ from sadhaka to sadhaka. And the guru is probably essential in helping us figure out exactly what those proportions are. In fact, though their names are different and the practices they encompass may be distinct, the four yogas are not entirely separate from each other. They flow into each other like tributaries of a river that leads to ultimate realization. If the ego is wrong identification, then the way to obliterate it is through right identification. I'm not the pile of identities related to body and mind that I take myself to be consciously or unconsciously. I'm not the body and mind. I'm not separate existence. Then what am I? Swamiji says, get rid of the little I and let only the great I live, end quote. The great I is who I am, the capital S self that is all and in all. This is the path of Jnana Yoga, which Swami Pitambarananda describes as the way of attaining perfection by change of consciousness. How? Shravana, Manana, Didhyasana. Hear the truth, contemplate the truth, live and breathe the truth. Practice discernment and dispassion, viveka and vairagya, and you'll get there. This practice is necessary and sufficient, a necessary and sufficient means to lead us to the ultimate, but we may not be capable of practicing it alone. The attachments may be too strong, too deeply rooted in the unconscious. We may hear the truth millions of times, but it does not penetrate deep enough into our minds to produce the required change of consciousness. So we keep practicing discernment and dispassion, as well as something else. such as devotion, bhakti. The great I, capital S self, is God, the source and giver of all happiness and love. God in human form, like Christ or Ramakrishna, if we're so inclined, or God as cosmic principle, like Shiva or Vishnu or Kali, God with form or God without form. Swami Sarvagatananda assures us that this God is not just imagination. His or her existence is real, and she helps us in a real way. Speaking of Ramakrishna, Swami Sarvagatananda says, the way to overcome egoism in any form is to pray to him constantly. We have to shift the burden to him, make the ego his servant, unquote. We thus reorient all attachments and desires towards this God, whose presence we try to feel. We practice japa and sing his or her praises, and do puja to try to feel this God, who is our all in all, and who controls everything. This purifies us. We no longer need to struggle for freedom, for whatever comes to us comes from God, our sweet beloved, and comes for a reason. All beings are his or her children, so separateness reduces. Separateness reduces even further. All beings are his or her manifestations. I myself am God's manifestation. Eventually, separateness is altogether eliminated. It dissolves into identity. God is my very self, is who I am. Swamiji thus tells us, quote, there's no difference between the supreme bhakti and the supreme jnana. The supreme bhakti is to realize God as the form of prema, love itself. If you see the loving form of God manifest everywhere and in everything, how can you hate or injure others? That realization of love can never come so long as there is the least desire in the heart. Or what Sri Ramakrishna used to say, attachment for kama kanchana. In the perfect realization of love, even the consciousness of one's own body does not exist. Also, the supreme jnana is to realize the oneness everywhere, to see one's own self as the self in everything. That too cannot come as long as there is the least consciousness of the ego, aham, end quote. Karma yoga is another path. As devotee, I do everything for God and for God's children or manifestations. I engage in action, karma, as God's instrument. I'm not the doer, God is the only doer. I serve all without compulsion or desire for return. Discernment and dispassion undergird my actions. Swami Vivekananda tells us, the only true duty is to be unattached and to work as free beings, to give up all work unto God. All our duties are His. Blessed are we that we are ordered out here. We serve our time, whether we do it ill or well, who knows? If we do it well, we do not get the fruits. If we do it ill, neither do we get the care. Be at rest, be free, and work. This kind of freedom is a very hard thing to attain, end quote. But we do not need to be a devotee of God in order to be a karma yogi, even though it is potentially much more difficult to be a karma yogi without being a devotee of God. It is not necessary to be a devotee of God to do selfless work, but it is difficult and tricky. The ego is a trickster. The ego of doing good to the world is the trap. Swamiji forcefully talks about it. Let us give up all this foolish talk of doing good to the world. It is not waiting for your or my help. Yet we must work and constantly do good because it is a blessing to ourselves. This is the only way we can become perfect. This is no easy thing to do. Again, in Swamiji's words, it is the most difficult thing in this world to work and not care for the result. To help a man and never think that he ought to be grateful, to do some good work and at the same time never look to see whether it brings you name or fame or nothing at all, end quote. The motive with which we work matters. Examining the motive means turning our attention to what is happening in our own mind. Noticing the workings of the mind, how at one level we may be striving to be good and do good, and at another level we're actually seeking recognition or reward or gratitude. This act of turning our own mind onto what is happening in our own mind is the basis of Raja Yoga. But Raja Yoga goes much further and deeper than simply examining our own motive. In Swamiji's own words, to turn the mind as it were inside, stop it from going outside, and then to concentrate all its powers and throw them upon the mind itself in order that it may know its own nature, analyze itself, is very hard work. Swami Adishvarananda says that this is the method of direct confrontation, of taking the bull by the horns, and it's no easy matter. I know that Swamiji said the same thing about Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga earlier. So no path is easy. It's all hard work. So why bother to undertake it? Here's what Swamiji responds in the context of his exposition on Raja Yoga. It will take away all our misery. When by analyzing his own mind, man comes face to face, as it were, with something which is never destroyed, something which is by its own nature eternally pure and perfect, he will no more be miserable, no more unhappy. All misery comes from fear, from unsatisfied desire. Man will find that he never dies, and then he will have no more fear of death. When he knows that he's perfect, he will have no more vain desires. And both these causes being absent, there will be no more misery. There will be perfect bliss even while in this body. That's the promise. Sounds quite appealing. If we obliterate the ego, there will be perfect bliss, no more misery, no more death. We will have come upon our own inherent divinity. Swamiji urges us, do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. End quote. This is all there is to it. Speaking for myself, what I've just read completely revolutionized my understanding of religion. And for this, I'm deeply grateful.
Thank you, dear Yuna. It was very good. Lot of material for thought. Our second speaker of this evening is again another professor, but both of them, they not only profess, they practice also. So here is Sukalyan Sengupta, professor at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. So, and he runs, along with others, the Indic Studies Department at the University of Massachusetts there. That is probably the only university which has this kind of Department of Indic Studies with its special course and so forth. So I request him, you just heard him, he has a very musical voice. Today morning also he sang a song very beautifully, and now also he joined others in presenting this song. So I request him to begin his talk this evening. Thank you. So Kalyan, please.
Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. Revered Swami Yogatmananda Ji Maharaj, friends, we will look at Swamiji's understanding or how he harmonized science and religion/spirituality. Now, I will try to frame this in the sense of objections, and we'll try to see what Swamiji's response is. So the first question could be asked is, why do we have to reconcile or harmonize science and religion? These are kind of separate domains. They don't have to overlap. In fact, there is a very famous scientist, Stephen Jay Gould, who propounded this theory. It's called non-overlapping magisteria. And he said that, well, science and religion, their domains are completely separate. There is no overlap. So that would basically mean there is no reason to even try to have a dialogue or synthesize or harmonize, etc., etc. But the problem is that both science and spirituality, they profess to get to the truth. The quest is for truth. So if that's the common feature, there is definitely room for discussion, dialogue, etc. Then the second objection is, well, okay, they might have some overlap, they might need to be discussed, but Swamiji was not a scientist. Why would we put a lot of importance to what he had to say? And the short answer is, even though he was not technically a scientist, he was very familiar with scientific literature of the times. And he had a brilliant mind that all of us agree. So when he put that brilliant mind to discuss about science, we definitely, there is a lot of resonance. Then the objection is, okay, he may have been conversant with science, but science has changed. Swamiji's time, it was what we call Newtonian, mechanistic science. Today it is quantum, post-Einstein. So the whole paradigm of science has changed. And the answer to that is yes, the paradigm has changed, but nevertheless the basic structure, the basic set of principles, the axioms, they are the same. So even though Swamiji's time he was mentioning about a Newtonian world, the principles still apply. So with that, let us look at how we can try to get to Swamiji's views on this reconciliation. So when we define science, the definition of science has changed over time. And that's one of the beauties of science, that it always tries to bring along, incorporate new ideas. So the old definition we won't get into. The new definition, it talks more of not science as such, but a scientific method, a scientific temperament, okay? So the method basically is you apply, you scrutinize something, and you do it to as far as you can go. And you have absolutely no bias. So this unbiasedness is the hallmark of science, they say. But that same principle can be applied to religion/spirituality as well. You define, you go ahead in that quest, in that path. The path is very well mapped out, and we will talk about it a little later. And you go as far as you can go. So again, there is no disjunction between the two. And science has now pretty much, there is unanimity that it is the understanding of nature both external and internal. This internal came much later. I mean, for a long, long time, science was only concerned with external nature. Now, the problem is that for external nature, the march of science has been so rapid and so strong that we now have so many ways to augment our senses and to get information about the external world. But when we come to internal world, not much has changed. So we come to a situation where, well, the principles of science do exist, but how do we apply to nature internal? That is something where we will see Swamiji's views have a profound solidarity to it. Now, one thing which has been hammered at religion for a long, long time is, well, it's a set of dogmas and creeds. There is no reason, rationality behind it. And to his boldness, to Swamiji's boldness, he was the first to admit it. And he said that the tools of inquiry we have to apply to religion. And he went as far as to say that if religion does not survive that test, we should just discard it because it's just not doing any good. And the sooner the better. So he was so bold, but he equally forewarned about what he called scientism. What is scientism? Scientism is this irrational belief in rationality, that rationality alone can get us everything, and you place tremendous importance, utmost importance to what scientists say. And Swamiji did mention one, that when Darwin says something, people just accept it. But if a mystic says, they are not willing to do the same. So, why? All right. So, the other thing is, the other objection is that science, of course, is based on these first principles, as we call them. And you build your building blocks or on this very solid structure of first principles. But that also is not really very tenable. Why do I say that? Well, even physicists would say that today's physics, we don't really understand, or we don't even know how to define very well what force is, what matter is, what energy is. We have built this massive structure, and we have all these laws that equate force to energy or whatever. But do we really understand what force is? And physicists themselves are asking that. So the explanation that, well, science is built on first principles and religion/spirituality does not have it, that's also not very tenable. All right. So we said that there is this universal quest for truth, which is common, but then comes Swamiji's this profound P.S. de Resistance, where he says, yes, both have this quest for truth, but science has no internal mandate, but religion does. And that is a very profound statement, because when we look at science, and that's its nature, the truths change. They change with time, they change with new data, they change with new hypotheses, they change with new verification of hypotheses. So, there is no such thing as absolute truth in science. But in spirituality, there is that absolute truth which one has to get to. The question is how. We'll see that in a moment. Then, another problem with science today is it is very siloed. It is very compartmentalized. Let's just take three disciplines which existed at the time of Swamiji as well. Let's say cosmology, genetics or evolution, consciousness. There's no interaction among the scientists in these fields. But Swamiji, again, to his remarkable insight, he gave a governing architecture. How? He said, well, you see, cosmology, if you look at cosmology, There's tremendous discussion about the creation of the universe. But again, we will not get too much into the Sanskrit technicalities, but in Sanskrit, the word srishti doesn't mean creation, it means projection. Okay, so it's a projection of what? And the answer to that is, well, it is evolution and involution together. There is this projection, and it lasts whatever billions of years it lasts, and again it then contracts or involutes. And so we come to this very surprising conclusion that the cause merges into the effect, and the effect merges into the cause. Whereas science is very strict. What is cause? What is effect? What is cause? What is effect? You have to separate the two. But Swamiji says, no. In the case of cosmology, for example, you cannot separate, because we know that 14.7 billion years ago, what we considered the universe now, it came into being from that Big Bang singularity. And of course, scientists differ when is the end of the universe, but there is a finite time after which this universe will cease to exist. So then we come to biological evolution, and this is where Swamiji again had some very profound insights. Now, this is of course late 19th century, so Darwin was very celebrated, and Swamiji of course had read Darwin very well. Now, if you look at Darwinian hypothesis, it is all random. There is no reason why, you cannot assign any reason why there is this change in the genetic structure when this is copied. And evolution follows from that, well, if there is this genetic change, those that can adapt to the change, they will survive. Those that cannot, they become extinct, so forth and so on. But Swamiji says, no, it is not random. The reason we have evolution is because there is that supreme intelligence which is trying to express itself. And it will keep on expressing, it will keep on, the evolution will keep on occurring until it comes to a state where it can fully express itself. And so it is not random. And again, even in evolution and involution are tied, coupled together. So now what we will do is, very quickly we shall see a very short interaction between Swamiji and a very famous scientist of that time, and that is Nikola Tesla. Today when we talk of Tesla, people think in terms of, Tilakji will be thinking about his EV, but Nikola Tesla was a brilliant genius, no question about it. Late 19th century, early 20th century, perhaps one of the top 3 scientists of the time. So we know that Tesla, he met Swamiji at the Corbin's house in New York, and they had a dinner. And we also know that at those times, Swamiji's lectures, public lectures, were hugely attended, massive crowds. So this was in what is today Madison Square Garden, and Swamiji spoke, and Tesla was in the audience. And Swamiji says that Swamiji, in his letter, he does not identify Tesla, but from the description, everybody agrees that this was Nikola Tesla. So Swamiji says, this man who doesn't sleep, he slept in his office, Tesla. He has no time to sleep. He did come to my lecture. And then we have a very short letter from Tesla to Swamiji. Tesla says, well, and in that dinner that I mentioned about, the Corbin's house dinner, Swamiji talked of 2 terms, Sanskrit terms, Akasha and Prana. And Swamiji mentioned that Akasha is nothing but the essence of existence. And so it's always there. And then prana comes into the picture, as it were. And prana is this sum total of all force, energy, matter, which then allows this akasha to be expressed. So Tesla was very impressed, and he wanted to meet Swamiji. And Swamiji also mentions that, well, I'm planning to meet him, and then he mentions in a note that then Vedantic cosmology would be on a sure footing. Unfortunately, that meeting never took place, to the best of our knowledge. But what is surprising is that these two words, akasha and prana, and the beauty of Swamiji again comes forth. If you look at the complete works, there is a diagram. In Swamiji's time, all literature was just text, no graphs, tables, no nothing like that. But Swamiji does make a diagram of how akasha and prana and mahat, and we will not get into that. But anyway, so the meeting never took place. But 30 years later, so this is 1896, 30 years later, Nikola Tesla writes, and it's in his biography, that, well, there was a man who explained to me these words, these terms, akasha and prana. He remembered these two terms 30 years later. So how profound the impact of Swamiji was on Nikola Tesla, we can gauge from that. Okay, so then we come to the crux of the matter. And the crux of the matter is, what is the evidence, or what is the proof? And in science, we have very established way of proving, well, it has to be a sensory experience. Need not be directly sensory, it could be the augments to our sensory system. But this sensory systems give us an input. From that, that generates an experience, and that experience proves. And Swamiji agreed with it, but he said there is also room for supersensuous experience. Experience does not necessarily have to be confined to the sensory level. And of course, that's a difficult subject, because the obvious question then is, how do we know when we have a supersensory experience? Is it just a hallucination? And Swamiji says, well, as I said earlier, there is a very clear mapped out path as to how do you get to a state where you can have these genuine supersensory experiences. Now the question then is, well, in the case of regular science, I show some evidence, you all can just look at that evidence and say, yes, this makes sense. But in the case of supersensory experience, supersensuous experience, how do I know? And that is, of course, not an easy answer to it, because Swamiji again says that number one, there exists these Shabda Pramanas, as we call it, the proof in the Vedic literature. But of course, people may not believe that. Okay, all right. Even though when we say Vedic literature, literature is not really the right word, because this is the revelations. But anyway, let's leave that aside. So, okay, now show me, how do I get to a state? And Swamiji then says, well, you see, mystics from times immemorial, they have, when they get these supersensuous experiences, they have related them. So one has to believe them. Now the question is, well, I will only believe when I get it. Okay, that's fine. You too can get it. There is, as I said, a clearly mapped. So Yona talked about the Raja Yoga. Swamiji mentions in his kind of commentary on the Raja Yoga that the path is very clearly laid out. How you prepare yourself. So the problem is that in order to get to that state, there is a process which you have to go through. There is no shortcut. That's the problem. With science, there is a shortcut, as I said. You show me the proof in a graph or in some observation, and that's good enough. In this case, that's not good enough. But that doesn't mean that you can completely discount supersensuous experience. Okay, so then the question is, as I was mentioning, how do I know whether it's hallucination or not? And Swamiji says very clearly that you will know when a mystic is genuine because A, he or she would be selfless, B, from their face or from their lifestyle, you can kind of have confidence in what they are saying, or not necessarily saying, how they live their life. It's not the statements. So the lakshanas, as we call it, they are very clearly spelled out in Upanishadic literature, so you can know very easily. So then we come to the last thing. Well, in order to excel in science, I need to have a good intellect. Yeah, perfectly fine. And that good intellect is good enough. I don't have to live a lifestyle that has to be, to which I have to conform to be a good scientist. And if you look at the biographies of many, many scientists, brilliant scientists, but the kind of lifestyle they led is definitely something that you and I would not like to follow. But they were brilliant scientists nevertheless. In this case, that cannot be. That just cannot be. Because, as I said, this adhikar, this preparation, all that is needed. So Swamiji was very clear that you cannot just expect to get evidence of supersensuous experience by not following those paths and by just living the lifestyle that you think is good enough. That will not do. So with that, I thank again Swamiji, Swami Yogatmananda ji, for giving me this opportunity. Namaste.
Dear friends, we had the privilege to listen in person to these two very beautiful, very impressive, and also effectively delivered lectures on Swami Vivekananda's great teachings, which were exemplified in his own life. That is a point that Sukalyan touched, that for just an intellectual person who can be a brilliant scientist, the life does not have to go on those lines. But for a religious scientist or a religious person, the preaching can happen only if somebody is actually practicing those truths in life. So it is the life that teaches in case of religion. Yona very beautifully elaborated on this central point of all religious practice, and that is erasing the ego. The ego is the false identification. She elaborately pointed out that why ego should be removed, because it is the source of all problems. Do you want problems or not? Ask this question. Do we not have enough suffering? Do you want, Sangeeta, more problems? No, it is nobody says, hey, I don't have enough of them, please send me more. We have enough of misery, enough of problems. So, we all agree, but what is the solution? Find out, diagnose the cause of all of them, and you will see it is this false identification with the changing body and mind. I, the consciousness that does not change, gets caught up in the changing body and mind. and therefore it becomes the source of suffering. So therefore, if we want to go beyond suffering, if we really want to get rid of suffering, and if we want the true lasting happiness, there is the only solution that you have to get rid of the ego, the false identification. You can easily see that it is false. It doesn't take much intelligence to see that you are not this body. Very easy thing to understand, but very difficult to accept because of the deep-rooted identification. So therefore we understand, but we don't accept. Now how to accept? There comes the path, the yoga. By practicing yoga, what you understand, but what you do not experience, this big gap between them gets bridged. And she very beautifully presented the critical features of each yoga, that how each yoga helps us to do that. And so we can actually experience this truth that I am not this body. As Shankaracharya tells in that beautiful hymn on Nirvana, 6 stanzas on Nirvana, Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham. I am not this mind, this intellect or ego. I am not the sensory or motor organs. I am the consciousness. I am the bliss. Achidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am that. So one can reach that experience by following this path. And following means, of course, one has to really move from where we are to where we want to reach. And that requires, it appears difficult only because of the ingrained habits. So we don't find it difficult. Actually, it is very easy. Very easy means much easier than leading the life of non-yoga. People say it is difficult, Swami, as if the life otherwise is very easy, isn't it? The life otherwise also has its difficulties, only those difficulties lead us nowhere. Whereas this difficult path, but it takes us to the goal of life. It is, even if you are not driving on the right path, you still are burning the gas. But you don't get anywhere. Whereas if you go on the right path, you will reach the destination. GPS will announce, you have arrived. And you feel so happy then. I have finally arrived. So this is how the path of yoga, it is, I assure you friends, that it is not really any more difficult than leading the life in this world, where we do not get liberation from suffering, more and more intense, and diverse ways of suffering. As Swami Vivekananda mentions, that just as the old, this rheumatism, if you drive it away from the one knee, it goes to another knee. Otherwise, it goes into the hips, other joints. It doesn't go away. So we have a variety in suffering, that's all. Therefore it is important that we have to take it up. And when we start moving on the path, we will see that it is not as difficult as we imagined it to be. It is, You can try, Many of you are trying, I know. So it is, thank you, Yona. They were very good observations. Sukalyan told about another very important part of Swami Vivekananda's teachings, which has a personal connection with me. When I was a student of science, I used to take pride in being atheist or agnostic. That, what God, it is all superstition, it is all just believing something nonsensical without any proof. It is we are followers of science. We go by what is proved. But, when I started studying Vivekananda, I saw a super scientist. I met a scientist where all the sciences that I was studying, they seem to be just irrational. They have no rational basis. It is, I could see, just a quick example. I was studying those days physical chemistry, and then there was our professor was telling us the kinetic theory of gases. And then he said, let me first tell you the assumptions that this theory makes. And these assumptions he went on writing on the board. Those days we had blackboard and white chalks to write with. So it is, now he started writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 19 assumptions he wrote. Not that they were proved. Assumptions means they were just assumed to be true. Not true. Not only that. And it was really hard-hitting to me. He started showing how each of these 19 assumptions are false. Each of these 19 assumptions, this professor of physical chemistry is telling this, how each of these 19 assumptions are false. And yet he said, still the theory holds good. So it is, that is how it is a superstition to think that science is based on proof. In fact, some of the deep scholars and professors of science, philosophers of science, they maintain, and once we had a symposium here on Universal Brotherhood Day on science and religion, and a professor at Brown, he was chair of chemistry here, he came and said that one thing that we should give up this understanding that science proves something. Science, by its very status as science, cannot prove anything. Science can disprove, but cannot prove. Why? Because science is based on data. Whatever data we collect, we analyze, and then we draw conclusions on that. We cannot guarantee that no data will further emerge which will not contradict the existing data. And actually, if you see the history of science, you will therefore find that how those conclusions which were held as sacrosanct by scientists at one time, they had to be kicked out because new data emerges, and then the old ideas could not accommodate the new data. That is why the truths of science are, you give a very nice word. We are very good at euphemism. We call it empirical truths. Means they are not true. At present, with the present data that we have, it is true, that's all. And we experienced it in COVID times, every day the new conclusions were being brought in, you see. So it is, therefore this is what the status of science is. And there is no wonder that it is, because it basically does not look deeper at all. It looks only at the surface. What is the meaning of surface? Whatever our sense organs bring to us, nothing deeper than that. And therefore, although Sukalyan did mention about external and internal science about mind, that science about mind is also not really about mind. It is something that you see from these sense organs and derive conclusions about mind. You don't see the mind. So, and then he told, well, very nicely, that you have to follow the methods of that particular science to study that science. So to practice this spiritual science, you have to get the instruments which are useful for that. If you want to study astronomy, you cannot use microscope. And if you want to study biology, you cannot use telescope. But we are attached to our instruments. The problem is that, and we don't want to get the proper instruments. Like if I see yogurt with my simple eyes, I don't see any worms in it. No insects are seen in it. But a biologist will tell me, oh, take a microscope, and then you will see that. No, I don't want to look through the microscope. Then, okay, then you can't see it. Exactly same. If you do not want to practice those disciplines and elevate yourself to that level, you will not be able to appreciate the spiritual truths. So, Swami Vivekananda, in the introduction of Raj Yoga book, gives these ideas very clearly. And therefore, my understanding personally underwent such a change that no, I am not giving up science at all. I am going to study the real science rather than the fictitious one. It is what the world calls science is just a fictitious science. The conclusions of it keep on changing, shifting, and so forth. So, therefore, the Swami Vivekananda brought about this harmony between science and religion by showing that the science of religion is the true, real science. And also, he pointed out that the religion also should be practiced in this kind of scientific spirit. He quoted that from Swamiji's Raj Yoga book, that if it does not meet that criterion of following the scientific method, then it should be just rejected. That is not religion. It is. So, many thanks to Kalyan for this wonderful discourse on science and spirituality, how Swami Vivekananda has harmonized these things. So here we shall conclude our symposium. Let us conclude with the closing prayers. Before that, a quick view of what we have in store for the week to come. It is the next Sunday, February 11. The topic is negation of negation. It is a very beautiful idea in Vedanta but I will be talking about it more from Meister Eckhart, a great non-dual Christian teacher. So that will be next Sunday. Tuesday and Friday classes will go on as usual at 7:30 p.m. On Tuesday the topic is Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and Fridays it is stories from Srimad Bhagavatam. Every day, morning, evening meditations and prayers, they will go on as usual. You are welcome to attend any or all of these programs. Now let us conclude with the closing prayers. Oh yes, and then after that today, there is the Shiva Nam Sankirtanam, the chanting of the praise, the glories of Lord Shiva. Swami Vivekananda is considered that a Shiva, a veritable manifestation of Shiva. So we shall chant that after this program, and also there will be the prasad distribution after that. I also suggest that all of you can take prasad, not just for yourself. There is a good quantity, so you can take it with you for your friends, family members, and so forth. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahur Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from the darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Microphone here. Vijay, microphone. Vande Devamumapatiṃ Suragurum Vande Jagatkaranam Vande Panagabhushanam Mrigadharam Vande Pashunam Patim Vande Surya Shashanka Vanhinayanam Vande Mukunda Priyam Vande Bhakta Janashrayam Chavaradam Vande Shivam Shankaram Gatram bhasmasitam sitam cha hasitam Haste kapalam sitam Khatvangam cha sitam sitascha vrishabha Karne site kundale Ganga fenasita Jata Pashupate Chandra Sito Murdhani Soyam Sarvasito Dadatu Vibhavam Papakshayam Sarvada Nanya Trisha Pashupate Hridhi me tvadiye Chittam vahami charane Pashupasha nashin Nishtham pradehi paramam Tvai brahmarupe Nirdosha purna charitam Kuru mam dhritam cha Om Shri Gauri Ganesha Shadanana Parivar Sameta Shri Panchanana Parabrahmane Namaha Om Namah Shivaya Shantaya Shankaraya Namo Namaha Har Samba Sada Shiva Samba Sada Shiva Samba Sada Shiva Samba Shiva Har Samba Sada Shiva Samba Sada Shiva पुरातन ब्रह्म सनातन स्वानन्दामृत मत्त शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब हर नीलकंठ शिव संकट मोचन निखिलाधीश्वर सकल शिव हर अमित गुणार्णव चंद्रेश्वर शिव अचल निवास सुरेश शिव हर सुर नर सेवित श्री हरि पूजित इंद्राध्यर्थित जनक शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब हर त्रिशूल धारण भुजग विभूषण कुशिति कंठ शिव हर त्रिभुवन पालक त्रिभुवन नाशक रिपुगण सूदक सुखद शिव हर ईश महेश नटेश कृपार्णव केशव सेवित पूर्ण शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर मायाधीश्वर नटन मनोहर अखिल जनाश्रय श्रेष्ठ शिव हर शंभु त्रिलोचन मौलि विभूषण धनुज विनाशन भयद शिव हर कलिमल नाशन शिव पंचानन रावण सेवित वरद शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर मन्मथ शासन ज्ञान हुताशन यति गण तोषण रुचिर शिव हर भुवन महेश्वर चिन्मय दीपक ऐश्वर्यान्वित मोद शिव हर एकानेक स्वरूप सदा शिव व्याघ्रांबरधर सुभग शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर हृदय विकासन मति मलनाशन फणिगण भूषण मधुर शिव हर त्र्यंबक भार्गव पूजित शंकर मोह विनाशक बोध शिव हर जन्म जरा मरणादि विनाशन दोष विवर्धन शुभद शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सुरदल नायक जय सुखकारक दोष निवारक धवल शिव हर तापत्रय हर वदन मनोहर नंदीश्वर शिव चरम शिव हर विनय प्रसारक गतिमतिदायक चिर शुभ साधक सतत शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर ओंकार प्रिय योगी जनाश्रय अजरामर वरधीश शिव हर निर्गुण गुणमय भुवनाधीश्वर निज जन पालक सौम्य शिव हर करुणासागर शांत सुधारणव साधक हितकर वन्द्य शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर बिल्वदल प्रिय ध्यानेश्वर शिव व्योमांबरधर दयित शिव हर गौरी प्रिय हर दीन जनाश्रय श्रीपति पूजित प्रणव शिव हर शाप विमोचन ताप निवारण भव भयनाशन रौद्र शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा हर कामेश्वर शिव नटराजेश्वर श्री परमेश्वर भव्य शिव हर स्वानंदामृत वर्षक शंकर अगतिमिरांतक सूर्य शिव हर अंतक शासन घातक भंजन पुरुष निरंजन भूप शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सदा शिव सांब शिव हर आशुतोष हर शिव गंगाधर चंद्रचूड गुरु दिव्य शिव हर राजेश्वर शिव मोक्ष विधायक ऊर्जति शंकर शुभ्र शिव हर करुणामय हर वरदा भयकर भुवन मनोहर परम शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर स्थावर जंगम सकल विलक्षण शोक निवारण पूर्ण शिव हर गिरिजापति गिरिजेश जटाधर शशांक शेखर योगी शिव हर कुहक विघातन पातक नाशन मदन विमर्दन वीर शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर ज्ञानेश्वर शिव विज्ञानेश्वर मोक्षद योगद शर्व शिव हर हृत्कमलासन ज्ञान प्रसारण करुणारुण समशोभ शिव हर मृड मृगधर हर गौरीश्वर शिव ईश भवेश सुरेश शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा हर नाग चर्मधर नागेश्वर हर ईश चिदंबर ज्येष्ठ शिव हर योगीश्वर हर योगी जनाश्रय योग विदांवर श्रेष्ठ शिव हर ओंकारेश्वर व्यापक निर्मल धवल हिमाचल वास शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर जगद्रूपधर वीरभद्र शिव भूतादिप हर विमल शिव हर ऋषभध्वज शिव भव्य सुरर्षभ रुद्रेश्वर हर घोर शिव हर सुरगण रंजक तांडव नर्तक भुवनाधिप करुणेश शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर भस्म विलेपन चंड विनाशन भास्वर लोचन भगत शिव हर निरुपम निष्कल वागीश्वर शिव दर्प विमर्दक काल शिव हर प्रेम सुधारणव प्रमथाधिप हर भीत जना भय बलद शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर पन्नग भूषण पुरुषोत्तम विबुध विनोदन भजक विबोधन वीरेश्वर शिव धीर शिव हर हाला हलधर वामाधर शिव भय हर सुंदर ललित शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर कालीश्वर विवकाल महेश्वर कैलासेश्वर सदय शिव हर अर्धनटेश्वर पूर्ण महेश्वर कांति सुधाकर शरभ शिव हर संसारार्णवतारक शंकर सहजानंद महेश शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब राम रव प्रिय नामेश्वर शिव राघव पूजित रम्य शिव हर पाशुपतास्त्र किरात मदहर अर्जुन सेवित शरण शिव गिरिजा वल्लभ दक्ष मखांतक विकट शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर राम कृष्ण प्रिय त्यागीश्वर हर मंगलकारक बोध शिव हर चक्र सुदर्शन दायक तारक हर कृष्णेश्वर तत्व शिव हर लावण्येश्वर शरधर नटवर लावण्यामृत लसित शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर विवेक भास्कर ज्ञान कलाधर जड़तम नाशक गुरु स्मर हर भव चिन्मय रूप चिदीश शिव हर आदि गिरीश्वर भक्त जनोश्वर वन्य भानु शशि नेत्र शिव हर सांब सदा शिव हर वामदेव प्रभु निखिल जगत गुरु हरिशर गिरिधनुराभ शिव हर गौरीपति गिरिजेश शिवावर व्योमकेश श्रीकंठ शिव हर अघमख पुर भय भव गदरि पुहर अजगव शशधर धारि शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब हर श्रुति शत श्रावित सहस्र शीर्षक विश्वनाथ तारेश शिव हर सर्व जगत्त्रय साक्षी सुरेश्वर सकल नयोद्गम सर्व शिव हर सार्वभौम नृप गुरु परमेश्वर निखिल चराचर सेव्य शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव अद्वैतामृत शांति सुख प्रद आदिचिदीश्वर विशद शिव हर बालचंद्रधर तरुण मनोहर भानुकोटि समदीप्त शिव हर मंगलनायक लोकेश्वर हर षण्मुख गजमुख जनक शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव हर उपमन्यु प्रिय महाबलेश्वर वरद पयोर्नवदत्त शिव हर सर्वशास्त्र निर्देशक शंकर डिमि डिमि डमरु निनाद शिव हर देव देव भव बाणेश्वर शिव दीन जन प्रिय नयद शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर कृतांत शासक मार्कंडेश्वर मृत्युंजय शिव वरद शिव हर तुंगनाथ रुद्राक्षधर प्रिय पिनाकधर हर भर्ग शिव हर आदिनाथ श्री केदारेश्वर शक्ति समन्वित सर्व शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर धर्म कर्म सर्वस्व समर्पण वेद शिखोत्थित मर्म शिव हर दशकाष्टक स्तुत महादेव शिव निगमागम मथितार्थ शिव हर ब्रह्म परात्पर पूर्ण महेश्वर सर्वचराचर पूर्ण शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव हर सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब सदा शिव सांब शिव Take to pranam. This we shall skip. Om Namah Shivaya Shantaya Karanatraya Hetave Nivedayami Chatmanam Tvam Gate Parameshwara. Now let us say our customary grace and then proceed to the basement to take prasad. Om Brahmarpanam Brahmahave Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva tena gantavyam Brahmakarma samadhina Hari Om Tat Sat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, please accept our offering. Bless us, make us pure and all-loving. May we not accuse, demand or complain, but love, respect and cooperate with all. May we not find faults with others, but try to find our own faults. May we not treat others as strangers, but learn to make all our own. May we feel the whole world to be our own. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.